Think about the last time you plugged something into the wall. You probably didn't give it a second thought, right? Well, behind that simple everyday action is an absolutely wild story of rivalry, a deep global divide, and even a city that literally rose from the ashes. And it all starts with a simple fact that might surprise you.
Right? Why does your American hairdryer sound like it's about to blast off to the moon in a European hotel? Or why would a European kettle barely get lukewarm in New York? This wasn't some rational, planned decision. It's not like a bunch of engineers sat in a room and decided this was a good idea. No, it's a historical accident, a story of bitter rivalries and a technological ghost that America, for all its power, could never quite escape.
If you've ever traveled internationally, you know the pain. You pull out your charger, look at the wall, and nope, your plug doesn't fit. And even if it did, the voltage is totally wrong. It feels like a massive, obvious flaw in our super-connected world. So why? Why don't we just have one universal standard for electricity? And that really brings us to the big question here, doesn't it? Why? I mean, why did the United States, a pioneer in all things electric, end up on the less common, and as we'll see, the less efficient side of this huge global divide? Well, it turns out the world is basically split into two electrical camps. You've got about a third of countries, like the US and Canada, running on a lower voltage. And then there's pretty much everyone else, using a much higher 220 to 240 volts. Now, you might think this was some big planned decision. It wasn't. This massive global divide is actually the result of a crazy historical accident. Well, the answer isn't some grand master plan. Not at all. It was more like an unbelievable historical accident. A total perfect storm of three things that seem completely unrelated. A super delicate light bulb, a game-changing new invention, and the crazy, rapid-fire growth of a single American city. To find our first clue, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning, and to the man who, pretty much by accident, set the standard for an entire country, Thomas Edison.
Edison's whole system ran on something called direct current, or DC, and it's pretty simple to understand. Think of it like water flowing through a garden hose. The power just moves in one steady, continuous direction. It's straightforward, and it worked. In 1882, his Pearl Street station in New York City became the world's first commercial power station, lighting up huge clients like J.P. Morgan in the New York Times.
So Edison's first grids ran on what's called direct current, or DC. And the voltage he picked, 110 volts, wasn't the result of some grand, complex calculation. Nope. He basically just took a generator that was already lying around, a machine that happened to put out 110 volts, and improved on it. It was convenient, sure, but it baked in a huge problem from day one. Now, you think Edison sat down with a slide rule and crunched the numbers to figure out that 110 volts was the perfect voltage. Nope. The truth is, he was just tinkering with an existing generator, a dynamo, that happened to kick out around 110 volts. For him, it was just a convenient place to start. But boy, did that one simple decision have some massive, long-lasting consequences.
Okay, so here's the million-dollar question. Why 110 volts? It wasn't some perfectly calculated optimal number. Nope, Edison just happened to improve an existing generator that put out 110 volts. And even more importantly, after testing something like 6,000 different materials, he found that his miracle filament, a piece of carbonized bamboo, was most stable right around 100 volts. You pushed it any higher, and that tiny little thread would just burn out. So that physical limit, plus about 10 extra volts to make up for resistance in the wires, locked his entire system into a 110 volt standard. But that system had a fatal flaw. It couldn't send power more than a mile.
And here was the problem, the light bulb itself. The glowing part, the filament, was made of carbon. And while it was a breakthrough, it was also incredibly delicate. If you tried to push much more than 110 volts through it, poof, it would burn out instantly. That one simple physical weakness of a tiny wire is what locked America's brand new electrical grid into a low voltage standard. Okay, so almost right away, Edison slams into this huge wall, a physics problem called voltage drop. Basically, the further electricity traveled from his power station, the weaker it got and the dimmer the lights became. The only way to fight it was to use these incredibly thick and prohibitively expensive copper wires. This one problem almost killed the whole idea of lighting up cities before it even got started.
We will move on to the next section shortly, and we've still got a lot to cover, but now let's take a break to discuss something. Thanks.
Let's talk about a simple way to take back your privacy and secure your connection online.
Okay, let's get right into it. Right now, your internet provider sees every single thing you do. And the difference is, honestly, night and day. Without a VPN, you're totally exposed. With one, you're invisible.
So, what exactly is a VPN? Just think of it like a secure, private tunnel for your data.
And here's how it works. You connect, it encrypts, and then it reroutes your traffic. Simple.
This gives you some new superpowers. First up, way better security, especially on that sketchy public Wi-Fi. Next, you get total privacy. It stops your internet provider and websites from tracking what you do online.
And finally, freedom. You can change your location to access content from anywhere and even find better deals.
All right, so which VPN should you choose? Let's look at two of the absolute best, starting with ExpressVPN. And look, the experts all agree. It's consistently called out for being super reliable and incredibly fast.
They've got servers in 105 countries, top-tier encryption, and their trusted server tech means zero data is stored.
Okay, our second top pick is NordVPN, and these guys are known for one thing: unbelievable speed.
And PC Mag really nails it here. They praise its huge collection of servers, which is a big deal.
It's got over 8,400 servers and comes with Threat Protection Pro to block malware and ads. So here's the bottom line. Both are amazing choices. It really just depends on what you need. Look, both are at the top of their game, which is why we fully endorse them.
And get this, both services give you a 30-day money-back guarantee. So, it's totally risk-free.
To get you started, just check the description below for links to the latest deals and offers. This is your chance to control your digital life. So, are you ready to take it back? And that fatal flaw? Well, it opened the door for someone else. A former employee, actually. The brilliant and kind of eccentric Nikola Tesla. He was completely obsessed with a different, much more elegant solution called alternating current. And this would spark one of the most vicious business rivalries in history, the War of the Currents.
Meanwhile, Edison was in a brutal fight with his rivals George Westinghouse and the brilliant Nikola Tesla. They were pushing a totally different system, high-voltage alternating current, or AC. So what did Edison do? He launched one of history's first corporate smear campaigns, trying to convince the public that his competitor's higher voltage was just flat-out deadly.
So you might be thinking, why not just crank up the voltage? Well, here's the real trap. He couldn't. And the reason he couldn't was because of his own star invention, the light bulb. That little carbon filament inside was so incredibly fragile that anything much higher than 110 volts would just, poof, vaporize it in an instant. He was literally handcuffed by the very thing he was trying to sell.
So the core difference between the two is simple, but it's absolutely revolutionary. If DC is a steady stream, AC is like rapidly pushing and pulling the energy back and forth. But the push-pull action isn't the real magic here. The magic is that AC works with these things called transformers. You can step up the voltage to crazy high levels to send it across the country with almost no loss, and then step it down to a safe level just before it gets to your house. This was something you just could not do with DC.
Edison, well, he freaked out. He saw AC as a massive threat and launched this brutal fear campaign, publicly electrocuting animals with AC. He even helped make sure the very first electric chair used his rival's technology, coining the nasty term Westinghouse. But the tide was turning. In 1893, Westinghouse and Tesla won the contract to light the Chicago World's Fair, a spectacle that proved AC was the future. And then, in 1896, when they used the power of Niagara Falls to light up Buffalo 20 miles away, the war was pretty much over. AC was the undisputed winner.
Okay, so AC wins the war, right? Problem solved. Everybody should just get on the same page and use the best version of AC. But nope. This is exactly where the world split in two. And it's all because of a new invention and the problem of being first.
And it was all because of this one little invention, the tungsten filament. This thing was a total game changer. It completely blew away the old physical constraint that had locked Edison into his low-voltage system. Suddenly, running power at a much higher voltage wasn't just possible, it was practical. And engineers in Europe, who were just starting to build out their grids, saw a massive opportunity. And here's where the physics gets really, really cool. The math was simple, but it was profound. For any given amount of power you want to deliver, if you double the voltage, you can cut the current in half. That's just a basic law of electricity. Power equals voltage times current.
But the real magic, the big payoff, is in the next step. The amount of energy you waste as heat in the wires is proportional to the square of the current. So if you cut the current in half, you don't just cut the energy loss in half.
So why was everyone so excited about higher voltage? Well, the physics here is actually pretty simple and really cool. See, to get the same amount of power, if you double the voltage, you can cut the current in half. Now, that might not sound like a huge deal, but here's the magic. The amount of energy you lose as heat in the power lines is related to the square of the current. So having the current has an absolutely massive effect. In 1904, a few inventors in Hungary patented the tungsten filament, and this thing was a total game changer. It was way brighter, it lasted a lot longer, but most importantly, it was tough, really tough. It could easily handle 220 volts, completely shattering that old limitation from the carbon bulb.
And this is where things get really interesting. To see why, we just need a quick, painless trip back to high school physics. See, power equals voltage times current. So if you want the same amount of power to, say, light up a room, but you double the voltage from 110 to 220, you only need half the amount of current flowing through the wires.
You cut it by a staggering 75%. You quartered it. This was huge. It meant European grids could use much thinner, much cheaper copper wires and send power way more efficiently. They basically leapfrogged America's older tech, and 220 volts became the new global standard. So, why on earth didn't America switch?
You end up cutting the energy that's just wasted as heat by a staggering 75%. When European countries, which were a little behind the US in building their grids, saw this number, they jumped at the chance. They immediately started building out their systems based on a new, super efficient 240 volt standard. I mean, just look at the difference. It's not even close. The 240 volt system was just vastly more efficient. It meant you could use thinner, cheaper copper wires and send power over much, much longer distances without it just bleeding away into the air as heat. Okay, you're saying, less current, so what? Well, it matters because of this formula. The energy you lose, the energy that's just wasted as heat in the wires, isn't just proportional to the current. It's proportional to the current squared. That little number 2 is everything. It means that even a small drop in current has a huge effect on wasted energy.
The answer comes down to this one simple, powerful idea from economics: path dependence. Basically, America was a victim of its own success. It was the first country to go all in on electricity, and that early choice created a path that became almost impossible to get off of. And this chart just shows you how powerful that inertia was. Look at this. By 1909, 5 full years after the better tungsten bulb was invented, US factories were still pumping out almost 4 times as many of the old 110-volt carbon lamps. The demand for the old tech was just relentless. The entire 110-volt infrastructure, the transformers, the wiring, all the appliances, it was already too deeply dug in.
And a huge driver of this inertia was something uniquely American: the skyscraper. After the Great Chicago Fire, Chicago started rebuilding, up. These new steel frame buildings couldn't use flammable gas pipes for light, so electric lighting became an absolute must-have. By 1899, the US already had 62 skyscrapers, all demanding 110-volt power, while the rest of the world combined had just 4. America was locked in.
I mean, that's the real question, isn't it? America had the best engineers, all the momentum, and a relentless drive for innovation. Why would it knowingly stick with what was now an inferior system? The story actually starts in Chicago. After the Great Fire of 1871, the city rebuilt itself with a brand new invention, the metal frame skyscraper. But there was a problem. Running flammable gas pipes for lighting 20 stories up was a recipe for disaster. These new towering buildings desperately needed a safer alternative: electric light. This created a frantic, unprecedented demand for electrification, which was put on full display for the whole country at the 1893 World's Fair. And here's the ironic twist. America was simply too successful, too fast. While Europe was still in the early stages, the US was frantically wiring its booming cities with Edison's 110-volt technology. By the time that better tungsten bulb came along, millions of homes and businesses were already on the grid. The cost to rip it all out and start over was just astronomical. It's a textbook case of what economists call path dependence, being locked into a path because you moved so quickly at the start.
We will move on to the next section shortly, and we've still got a lot to cover, but now let's take a break to discuss something. Thanks.
Okay, let's talk about how top creators are using AI to totally automate their workflow.
If you're a creator, you know the grind is real. The pressure to post is just relentless.
And get this, you're competing with over 20 million other creators out there. That's insane.
It's this endless loop, right? Writer's block, then tedious editing. It can totally burn you out. But what if AI could just handle the hard stuff? Let's start with that dreaded blank page. Okay, first up is Tube Magic. Think of it as your personal idea machine. Writer's block, gone.
And it's super simple. You just match your channel's style, pick an AI, set the length, and go. And this isn't some new gimmick. Creators have already generated over 200,000 scripts with it. So you've got this amazing script, awesome. But now you actually have to make the video, right? That's where vid.ai comes in. It's an AI video generator that turns your script into a short. And again, it's a crazy simple process. You put in your script, customize the look, and generate. You get a ton of creative tools too. We're talking AI voices, visual styles, even gameplay backgrounds. Okay, so this is where the magic really happens. Let's put these two tools together. So, step 1, you generate a viral style script in TubeMagic that matches your channel's voice. Then, you literally just copy and paste that script straight into vid.ai. That's it. You go from a blank page to a finished short in minutes. No camera, no editing skills needed. But look, does this stuff actually work? Let's hear from some creators who are using it.
That's from Matt Parr. He runs 12 channels and actually created vid.ai to solve his own problem.
And his results? His channels have over 1 billion views. Yeah, 1 billion.
So it's not just about saving time. It's about using the right keywords to actually rank higher.
Creators are literally planning out months of content this way. Imagine that, zero stress.
So what this all does is free you up from the grunt work to focus on strategy and growth.
Look, the future isn't about working harder. It's about working smarter. And that means using AI. So the real question isn't if AI will change things, but how you're going to use it to win. But hold on, that's not where the story ends, not even close. Because while it seems like America is stuck with this inefficient 120-volt system, there's a wild secret hiding in the walls of pretty much every single modern American house. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, if 120 volts is so inefficient for things that use a lot of power, is every American home just wasting a ton of energy on its stove or its clothes dryer? The answer, amazingly, is no.
After everything we've talked about, all the physics, the efficiency gains, it seems like an open and shut case, right? The US system must be worse. It has to be. The shocking truth is no, not at all. And the reason why has been secretly wired into nearly every American home for decades. This brings us to this really cool economic idea called path dependence. All it means is that sometimes an early choice, even if it's not the best one, gets so baked into the system that changing it later becomes practically impossible. The cost and the chaos are just too high, and the US was about to become the world's biggest case study.
And here it is, the big reveal. The truth is, right where the power actually enters your house, the US is fundamentally a 240 volts country. The old 120-volt legacy is still there, for sure, but it's part of a much, much cleverer system.
Just think about it for a second. We have powerful electric stoves, clothes dryers, central air conditioners, and now even EV chargers in our garages. These things are incredibly power hungry. How could they possibly run efficiently on an inferior 120-volt system?
It's this incredibly clever system called split-phase AC, and it's actually a direct descendant of a 3-wire system Edison himself invented way back in 1882. The transformer on the pole outside your house sends a 240-volt line, but it has this center tap right in the middle, which creates a neutral wire. And this simple trick gives you the best of both worlds.
Okay, here's the secret. Your house doesn't get 120 volts from the power line. It actually gets 240 volts. That power then goes to your breaker box, where it's split into two 120-volt legs. Your normal everyday outlets just use one of those legs to give you 120 volts. But your big, power-hungry appliances, they're designed to tap into both legs at the same time to get the full, efficient 240 volts.
So here's how it works. If you measure the voltage from the first hot wire to that center neutral wire, you get 120 volts. Perfect for your regular outlets, your lamps, your TV. If you measure from the second hot wire to the neutral, you also get 120 volts for your other outlets. But, and here's the clever part, if you measure across both of the hot wires, you get their combined power, a full 240 volts ready to efficiently run your big stuff like your stove, your dryer, or your EV charger. It's a brilliant workaround.
This is exactly why you have those different shaped plugs in your house. The small, familiar ones are for your lamps and phone chargers. But those big, beefy outlets in your laundry room or behind your stove, those are delivering the full 240 volts. It's an ingenious system that gives America the best of both worlds. A lower, arguably safer voltage for small stuff, and high voltage efficiency for the things that really need the power. So the big secret, the shocking truth this whole time is this. America isn't a 120 volt country at all. It's a 240 volt country that just happens to use a really clever system, a direct descendant of an idea from Edison himself, by the way, to also provide 120 volts right where it's needed. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? This entire global standard, this thing that affects billions of people, was all shaped by the physical limits of a tiny glowing wire from the 1880s. What other invisible systems that we use every single day are the result not of some grand design, but of a simple, long-forgotten accident of history?
So, what this means is that every single day we're living with the echoes, the ghosts, of a decision made over 100 years ago. It's a compromise system that totally works, but it's so deeply embedded in the country that it's now completely impossible to change.
So why not just change now? Well, the reason is just money. A staggering amount of it. It would mean replacing the wiring in every single building, and more importantly, every single 120-volt appliance in the entire country. Every lamp, every TV, every toaster. We're talking estimates that run into the trillions of dollars. The ghost of that first system is basically encased in a trillion-dollar tomb of copper and concrete.
So, when you boil it all down, what's the real legacy of this whole century-old battle? It's that we live in a world that is permanently divided by a technological choice made not for what was most efficient, but because of the physical limits of a material chosen way back in the 1880s. And that brings us to the most mind-blowing part of this whole story. The next time you plug something into a wall socket, just remember that the voltage coming out of it is a direct consequence of a decision made to accommodate one single, fragile, glowing thread of burnt bamboo. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest systems in our world aren't built on grand designs, but on the simple, unmovable weight of just being first.
Well, like most things, it's really a trade-off. The 120-volt system is arguably a little bit safer from a shock perspective, but let's be clear, both can be lethal. On the other hand, the 230-volt system is just flat out more efficient. It uses cheaper wiring, and it can deliver twice the power from a single outlet, which is exactly why electric kettles boil water like magic in Europe.
So the next time you plug in your phone, just take a second to remember the story. You're plugging into a system that was born from a fragile filament, a brilliant invention, the explosive growth of a city, and a 140-year-old compromise that secretly kind of gives us the best of both worlds. And it really makes you wonder, right? What other elegant, hidden systems are all around us, just hiding in plain sight?
Thanks for watching to the end of this story. Now, to wind down, feel free to just let the video roll and enjoy some crypto discussion. At the time of recording this video, Bitcoin is falling sharply, but I'm still pretty confident in it.
Okay, let's dive into this. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by all the crypto talk, or maybe just a little skeptical of the whole thing, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to cut through all that noise and tackle the biggest things that hold people back. And let's be real, it's easy to see why, right? The headlines are just wild sometimes. One minute you're hearing about crypto being used for shady stuff, and the next, someone's paying millions for a digital cartoon. It's enough to make the whole thing feel, well, kind of weird and untrustworthy. But here's a thought. What if the real barrier, the thing that's actually stopping us from exploring a new technology like crypto, isn't the tech at all? What if it's actually us? The way our brains are hardwired.
So that's exactly what we're going to dig into. We're going to unpack 3 super common mental traps, or biases, that can really cloud our judgment and stop us from seeing a big opportunity right in front of our faces. First up is a big one, confirmation bias.
If you already think crypto is a scam, your brain is going to go out of its way to prove you right. You'll click on every negative story about a market crash, and you'll probably just scroll right past the news about major companies and countries adopting it. It's like having blinders on. Then there's loss aversion. Basically, losing 20 bucks feels about twice as bad as finding 20 bucks feels good. Our brains just hate losing. And with something like crypto, which can be volatile, that fear gets cranked up to 11, often overshadowing the fact that assets like Bitcoin have shown some incredible growth over the long run. And finally, we've got the good old status quo bias. We're creatures of habit, right? We like what's familiar. Traditional banking, we get it. It's what we know. Crypto comes along and challenges all of that, so our default reaction is to think, whoa, that's new and different, must be risky. It just feels safer to stick with the old way. But here's the cool part. Once you're aware of these mental roadblocks, you can start to look past them. You can step back from the scary headlines and see the bigger picture. You know, the solid technology and the growing interest from some really serious financial institutions in things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. So that really leads to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? How do you even begin to dip your toes into this world in a way that feels simple and, more importantly, safe? Well, this is where a platform like Paybis comes into the picture. It was basically built to solve that exact problem, to give people a secure, straightforward, no-nonsense way to get started. And look, you don't have to just take my word for it. The proof is right there. We're talking over 500,000 downloads, and just look at those ratings on the App Store and Google Play. People are clearly finding it to be a trusted way in. So how easy is it really? What does simplified actually look like in practice? Let's just break it down. The whole process is designed to feel familiar. Seriously, it's just 3 steps. You decide how much you want to buy, you tell it where to send the crypto, and by the way, if you don't have a wallet, they give you a free one, and then you pay. It's pretty much as easy as buying anything else online. And you know all that tedious paperwork you usually associate with anything financial? Yeah, forget that. Getting verified on Paybis can take less than 2 minutes. It's all about getting you set up quickly and securely without any of the usual headaches. This isn't some kind of exclusive club either. It's a truly global platform. Paybis is available in over 180 countries, which makes it one of the most accessible ways to get into crypto, pretty much wherever you are in the world. And hey, remember that loss aversion bias we talked about, that fear of putting a lot of money on the line? Well, this number right here is the answer to that. You can start with as little as $5. It totally removes that pressure to make a big, scary investment and just lets you learn as you go. And it's all wrapped up in a package with everything you'd need. Transactions are instant. Got a question at 3 a.m.? There's 24/7 support. You get a free wallet, but can also send to any other wallet you want. You can pay with your card, Apple Pay, all the stuff you already use. And of course, the whole thing is locked down with top-of-the-line security. At the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to. Their entire mission is built around the beginner. It's about tearing down those walls of complexity and fear and just making the whole process simple, safe, and totally transparent. So, after all this talk about confirmation bias and loss aversion, you realize the biggest bias of all might just be inaction. You know, the choice to do nothing because it feels easier. So the real question isn't just about crypto. It's about what you might discover when you decide to take that first simple step.
Thanks for watching to the end of this video. If you want more content like this, there is a playlist that should be popping up right now. Stay tuned for more. I've also made this free video for you with solutions for creativity, financial strength, and online security. I hope you'll enjoy this offer as well as all the others featured on my channel. And that concludes this video. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this is Hermalau Tube. My name is Konstantin, reminding you that your interest is the current that powers this channel.